It was a cold November night in 1996, and the streets of New York City felt heavy with something more than just rain. Tupac Shakur, a man of words and fire, had just left a recording session, his mind still buzzing with the weight of his latest project. The city he called home was no stranger to violence, but this was different. This wasn't just another shooting. It was a moment that would echo through time. Tupac was not just a rapper. He was a poet, a revolutionary, a man who spoke truths that others feared to hear. And yet, in that moment, the world would never know what he was about to say. The silence that followed would be louder than any words he ever spoke.
It began on a cold November night in 1994 in the streets of New York City. Tupac was known as a rising star, a voice for the voiceless, and a symbol of resilience in a world that tried to silence him. He had just finished a performance at a small club, his energy still high, his words still sharp, his presence undeniable. But that night, the music would stop and the world would change. The gunfire came suddenly, without warning. A single bullet, fired from a distance, struck him in the chest. The moment was captured in a single frame of a security camera, a frozen instant of violence that would haunt the world. The police arrived quickly, but it was too late. Tupac was rushed to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead. The world had lost its voice, and the silence that followed was louder than any scream. In the days that followed, the city was gripped by a wave of grief and confusion. Questions about who fired the shot and why consumed the media and the public, but the truth remained buried in the chaos. The case became a symbol of a deeper tragedy. The violence that surrounded hip-hop, the dangers of fame, and the cost of a life cut short by a single, tragic moment. It started with a missed call. Tupac was supposed to be in the studio, but his manager didn't get through. No answer, no warning, just silence. Then came the messages. Short, cryptic. He was on his way, he was safe, he was coming, but they never arrived. No response, no reply. His friends tried to reach him. They called, they texted, they waited. But the silence grew louder. The fear grew heavier. And still, no sign of him. They thought he was in trouble. They thought he was hurt. But no one knew the truth. No one knew what was coming. Only that something was terribly wrong. On the night of September 13, 1996, Tupac was shot in a drive-by, the bullet tearing through his body as he lay on the hood of a car, blood seeping into the pavement like a silent warning. The gunshots echoed through the neighborhood, but no one knew the gravity of what had just happened. His friends rushed to him, but the damage was already done. The next day, he was still alive, but the wound was deep. The bullet had entered his body and lodged itself in his hip, a constant reminder of the violence that had just unfolded. The shooting was the beginning of a long and agonizing battle with his injuries. He fought to stay alive, but the pain and the uncertainty were suffocating. Despite the odds, he refused to give up. He kept fighting, not just for his life, but for the legacy he wanted to leave behind. I remember the night like it was yesterday. The sirens, the chaos, the silence that followed. The man in the black hoodie, eyes wide, hands trembling, as if he had just been caught in a storm. He didn't speak, just stared, as if the weight of what had just happened had shattered him. No words, no explanation, just a man standing in the middle of the storm, broken. Another witness, a woman in a blue dress, clutched her chest, whispering to herself, as if trying to make sense of the world that had just changed. Her hands trembled, her eyes searching for something she couldn't find. There were others too, men and women, young and old, all with the same look in their eyes. Shock, fear, and the terrible realization that something irreversible had just happened. No one could explain it. No one could say for sure who had done it. Only that the music, the voice, the presence of Tupac gone. And in its place, only silence and fear. The investigation into Tupac's death was slow, methodical, and filled with contradictions. Every lead was followed, every detail scrutinized, but the truth remained elusive. like a shadow slipping through the cracks of a dimly lit room. Forensic evidence pointed to a struggle, but the bullet path suggested a clean shot. The gunpowder residue was inconsistent with a close-range fire, raising more questions than answers. Witnesses came forward, but their stories didn't align. Some claimed to have seen the shooter, others insisted they hadn't. The chaos of conflicting testimonies left investigators with more doubt than clarity. The case took years to resolve, but even then, the truth never fully emerged. The investigation revealed not just a murder, but a web of secrets, lies, and a culture of violence that had long been ignored. There is one thing we all know, but no one can explain. The moment the shot was fired, the world stopped. The silence that followed was louder than any noise. The gun was fired, but from where? The witnesses saw nothing, heard nothing. Only the sound of the shot and the body falling. The mystery of the shot remains unsolved, like a bullet lost in the dark. No one saw the hand that pulled the trigger. No one heard the click of the safety. The moment was too fast, the chaos too loud. The truth was buried before it could be found. The world wanted answers, but the silence that followed was too heavy. The one detail that has never been explained is not just a question. It is a wound that never healed. In the streets of the East Bay, the legend of Tupac lives on. People still talk about the night he vanished, the silence that followed, the weight of the unknown. Some say he was killed by the hands that made him famous. Others whisper of betrayal, of a secret deal gone wrong. No one can say for sure, but the rumors never die. In some corners of the city, the name Tupac is still a curse, a warning. A reminder that power, fame, and violence walk hand in hand in places where the law can't reach. Even now, years after the truth was buried, people still gather in silence, in places where he once stood, to remember, to mourn, to wonder who shot Tupac. The truth may never be found, but the legend will always live in the streets, in the stories, in the silence that follows every gunshot. Even now, years after the fact, the truth remains just out of reach. The evidence is scattered, the witnesses are silent, and the facts are buried beneath layers of speculation and confusion. The case has become more than a crime. It's a symbol of a deeper, unresolved struggle within our society. A mirror held up to the chaos of fame, violence, and the cost of truth. The world has moved on, but the silence around Tupac's death has not. It lingers like a ghost, haunting those who remember and haunting those who never knew. In the end, we are left with the music, the legacy, and the question that refuses to fade. Who shot Tupac? And why does it still matter? He was a voice that echoed through the streets, a fire that never dimmed. But even flames can fade, and sometimes the silence that follows is louder than the noise. We remember the music, the words, the legacy. But we forget the moment, the bullet, the silence, the way the world changed in an instant. He walked through fire, and the world watched. But what happens when the fire goes out? What remains when the light is gone? We tell his story, not to forget, but to remember that even the brightest light can be snuffed out, and the world may never know why. This place, once a place of hope, now stands as a monument to despair. It was built in the 1880, with its towering stone walls and Gothic spires, meant to house the mentally ill with care and dignity. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of antiseptic and decay. Patients were often restrained, their screams echoing through the empty halls, lost in the silence that followed. The staff, once compassionate, became overwhelmed by the suffering they witnessed. Some left in horror, others were lost to the madness they tried to contain. When the asylum was finally abandoned in the 1960s, it was as if the ghosts of its victims remained trapped within its walls, their sorrow still echoing through the empty corridors. Today, it is a place of whispered warnings and unexplained cold spots. Those who dare to enter say they hear voices, feel eyes watching them, and see figures moving in the dark. This is the place where the past refuses to stay buried, where the echoes of suffering still linger, waiting to be heard. It all began in the early 1900s, when the town needed a place to care for the mentally ill. The asylum was built with hope, but also with fear. It was meant to heal, but it became a prison. The first patients were brought in with the promise of treatment and dignity. But the staff were poorly trained, and the methods were brutal. Patients were locked in cells, beaten for resisting, and left to suffer in silence. Doctors and nurses who worked there often spoke of a strange presence. They claimed the building had a will of its own, that it whispered to the patients, and that it never truly let them go. As the years passed, the asylum became a place of horror. Patients were never released, and many died in their cells. The staff left one by one, haunted by what they had seen and done. By the time the asylum was finally closed, it was too late. The town had moved on, but the ghosts of its victims remained. The walls still remember, and the silence is louder than any scream. The first sign came when the lights flickered without warning, casting long, trembling shadows across the cracked walls. It was as if the building itself was trying to remember something it had long since forgot. Then came the whispers, soft, unintelligible, just on the edge of hearing. They came from the empty rooms, echoing through the corridors like voices trapped in time. The temperature dropped suddenly, even though the windows were closed and the air was still. It was a cold that seeped into the bones, as though something had moved through the space. One evening, the door to the basement swung open on its own, revealing a dark, gaping stairwell. No one had touched it, and yet it had awakened. And then the silence. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of something listening, waiting, and ready to speak. One night, the silence was broken by a scream that echoed through the halls, like a ghost trying to be heard. A nurse ran through the corridors, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her hands clutching a medical journal filled with frantic notes. Inside, she found a patient, unmoving, eyes wide open, lips parted as if trying to speak, but no sound came out. The nurse screamed, but the sound died in her throat as she realized the patient had never been there to begin with. The asylum had taken its final victim, not in the way of the living, but in the way of the unseen, leaving only echoes and questions behind. I remember the silence so vividly, like the walls had swallowed every sound. It wasn't just quiet, it was heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. One night, I heard a child's voice calling from the stairwell. It wasn't loud, just a soft, trembling whisper, like it was afraid to be heard. She described the voices as clear, almost familiar, but the words didn't make sense. It was like the walls were whispering secrets they weren't meant to share. One of the last patients, a woman named Clara, claimed she saw a shadow in the hallway every night. It never moved, but it watched. And then, one morning, she was gone. Her journal was found days later, the last entry written in trembling handwriting. They're still here. They never left. They just wait. We entered the building with a flashlight in one hand and a sense of dread in the other. The silence was heavier than the air, pressing against our ears like an unspoken warning. The walls were cold, and the floor creaked beneath our feet as though the building itself remembered every step we took. It felt like we were walking through the bones of a forgotten past. In the basement, we discovered old medical records, yellowed and brittle. Names and dates filled the pages, but the faces were missing, erased as if they had never existed. One of the walls had a faded mural, a depiction of a man in chains, his face twisted in anguish. The paint was peeling, but the emotion remained, sharp and unrelenting. As we left, the wind howled through the broken windows, carrying with it a sound like weeping. It was as if the building was trying to tell us something we weren't ready to hear. There's one thing no one has ever been able to explain. A single detail that lingers like a whisper in the silence of the halls. Every time we've tried to piece together what happened here, this detail has always been left behind, like an unfinished thought. It was found in the pocket of a man who vanished without a trace, a man who was never supposed to be here. We've searched for answers, but the key leads nowhere. It's like the asylum itself is holding its breath, waiting for someone to ask the wrong question. And so we walk away, knowing that somewhere in the silence, the key still waits for someone who might finally understand what it's trying to tell us. The locals still speak of the ghostly wails that echo through the empty halls, as if the patients are never truly gone. Some say the asylum was cursed the day the first patient was locked away, and the curse lives on in the silence. The caretaker who tried to close it down vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a single, blood-stained journal. Even now, when the wind howls through the broken windows, some swear they can hear the whispers of the lost, calling for help. Even now, decades later, the whispers still echo through the hollow corridors. No one has ever found the bodies that were buried beneath the floors, nor the names of the patients who vanished without a trace. The last official records were sealed away, locked in a vault that no one remembers the key to. Some say it was a warning, others say it was a cover-up, but no one knows for sure what happened on that final night. The air inside is thick with silence, broken only by the wind howling through the broken windows. It's not the wind, though, it's something else, something waiting. And so, the mystery remains. A story without an ending, a place that never truly left the world. It lingers like a ghost in the spaces between memory and truth. The walls remember, but they do not forgive. They hold the echoes of those who were never meant to leave. In silence, the past whispers through cracks in the floor, through broken windows, through the very air we breathe. The asylum was a place of hope, then a place of despair, and now, a place where nothing remains but the weight of what was. When the last patient left, the building was left behind. But the stories, the pain, the suffering, it never left. And so, the asylum stands as a monument to those who were lost, and to the ones who never found their way out. This place is more than a building. It's a memory, a wound, a whisper of the past that refuses to fade. The asylum was built in the early 1900s, a time when madness was met with silence, and the sick were locked away in the dark. The nurses vanished, the patients were never seen again, and the ones who left never spoke of what they saw. The place has a voice. Not a voice of reason, but of sorrow, a voice that calls out from the silence, begging to be heard. This is not a place to be visited lightly. It is a place that remembers, that mourns, and that waits for someone to listen. In the year 1872, the town of Eldridge voted to build a place for the insane, a sanctuary for those deemed beyond salvation. It was meant to be a place of healing, but the land it was built on was cursed long before the first stone was laid. The architect, a man named Elias Voss, was known for his grand designs and questionable methods. He believed that true healing required isolation, silence, and control, ideas that would shape the fate of many. The first patients arrived in 1873, brought by townsfolk who saw the asylum as a burden they could offload. Most were the poor, the misunderstood, or the accused of crimes they had no memory of committing. Among them was a young woman named Clara, accused of witchcraft. She was not a witch, but her mind was fragile, and the asylum became her prison, a place where fear and neglect took root. By the time the asylum closed in 1912, over 300 patients had passed through its doors. Many died in silence, their names erased from records, their stories lost to time. The building was abandoned, but the echoes of its past remain. The walls still whisper the names of those who were never meant to be forgotten. The first signs were subtle, almost like a whisper in the wind. A faint creak in the hallway where no one had walked. It was just a sound, but it lingered like a memory that shouldn't be there. Then the temperature dropped. Not just a chill, but a cold that seeped into your bones. The air felt heavier, as if the building itself was holding its breath. The walls began to weep. Not water, but something darker. A thin, silvery residue that dripped down like a tear from a forgotten soul. It left a stain that never faded. Then the voices. Not loud, not clear, but a murmur just at the edge of hearing. A chorus of whispers, not of the living, but of the ones who had been trapped here long before. One night, the silence was broken by a scream that echoed through the empty halls. It was a sound that cut through the darkness, raw and desperate, like a soul trapped in a nightmare. No one heard it. No one came. The scream faded into the void, swallowed by the walls that had once contained so much suffering. It was as if the building itself had exhaled. Her body was never found. Only the mirror remained, a silent witness to the final moment of a life that had been lost to the walls. No one spoke of her again. No one remembered her name. In the weeks that followed, whispers began. The mirror was said to show the faces of those who had died in the asylum. It was a warning, a reminder that some places are not meant to be left untouched. And so, the asylum stood, a monument to the silence that followed. A place where the past refused to die, and where the echoes of the lost still linger, waiting for someone to listen. I remember the sound of her voice, echoing through the halls like a ghost trying to be heard. She called my name, but when I turned, there was nothing but dust and silence. One night, I heard her laughing, but it wasn't laughter. It was a sound like broken glass, sharp and cruel, cutting through the stillness of the abandoned ward. I tried to leave, but the doors wouldn't open. The walls seemed to close in, and I felt her presence, heavy and suffocating, pressing against my back. When I finally escaped, I didn't look back. But I never forgot the way she looked at me, empty eyes, like she had seen everything and had nothing left to say. Some say the asylum is still alive, watching, waiting. And some say the only way to truly leave is to never return. We entered the asylum with a flashlight in one hand and a notebook in the other, our breath visible in the cold air, our footsteps echoing like the ghosts of those who once walked these halls. The first thing we found was a child's toy, half buried in the dust, its plastic cracked and faded, a silent testament to a life that was never meant to be. In the basement, we found a locked room, its door rusted shut, the air inside thick with the scent of mildew and something older, something unspoken. Inside, we found a child's drawing, its colors smeared and faded, a smiling face with eyes that seemed to follow us, as if it remembered what it had lost. We found no bodies, but we found something worse. Proof that some people were never meant to leave this place. The investigation ended with more questions than answers, and a feeling that we had only just begun to understand the truth that had been buried here for decades. There is one detail that has never been explained. One thing that every researcher, every ghost hunter, every skeptic has walked away from without an answer. It was found in the basement of the old asylum, sealed in a metal box with a rusted lock, untouched for decades. No one knows who she is or why she was there. Some say she was a patient, others say she was a nurse, but none can confirm it. The strange thing is, she was never listed in any records. No name, no file, no mention of her in any official documentation. She is the only person in the entire asylum who was never accounted for, and no one has ever been able to find her name in the records. Some say the screams you hear are not echoes of the past, but warnings from the present. The asylum is a mirror, reflecting the guilt of those who once lived here. Locals claim the walls are still alive, remembering every cry, every secret, every death. The building is a grave, and the ghosts are the mourners. Some say the nurses who vanished never left. They were lost to the madness, their souls trapped in the building, wandering the halls like shadows. Theories persist, whispered in the dark, passed from parent to child. The asylum is not just a place, it's a warning. A place where the line between the living and the dead was never drawn. And so the stories live on, not as myths, but as truths that refuse to be forgotten. The asylum is not empty, it is waiting. Even now, the silence of that place feels like a warning. The wind carries no sound, only the weight of what was left behind. No bodies were ever found. No answers were ever given. Just a trail of whispers that lead nowhere, and a silence that refuses to break. Every new investigation finds another clue, another name, another story, but none of them ever reach the truth. It's as if the asylum has its own will, its own silence. The mystery remains, not because it's unsolvable, but because it's too painful. Some secrets are better left buried, even if they never truly rest. And so, the asylum stands not as a place of healing, but as a monument to the forgotten. A place where the dead still speak, and the living still listen. The silence here is not empty. It is filled with the weight of every forgotten soul who once wandered these halls, their echoes still lingering in the air. We walk through places where time stands still, and the past refuses to let go. These walls remember, and they remember everything. Sometimes, the greatest tragedies are not those that end in death, but those that are left unfinished, waiting for someone to finally give them closure. And so we leave, not with answers, but with the quiet understanding that some stories are meant to be carried away with us, not told. But remember, the past is never truly gone. It lingers, just beyond the reach of memory, waiting for the right moment to be heard again. This place, known as Blackmore Asylum, was once a beacon of hope for the mentally ill, but now it stands as a silent tomb of forgotten souls. The walls, once lined with hope and healing, now echo with the whispers of those who never left. Stories of patient abuse and unexplained deaths have made this place a site of fear, where the air itself feels heavy with sorrow. Even now, the wind howls through the broken windows, carrying with it the faint, mournful sound of a child's voice. As the sun sets, the shadows grow longer, and the silence becomes something else entirely, something that watches. In 1884, the town of Black Hollow voted to build a place to care for the mentally ill. It was meant to be a place of hope, a sanctuary for those who had been cast aside. The asylum was designed by a young architect named Elias Varn, who believed in the power of architecture to heal. He poured his heart into every stone and beam. The first patients arrived in 1886. Some were voluntary, others were taken by force. It was a place of suffering, but the town believed it was necessary. Among the early patients was a woman named Clara Halloway, who had been accused of witchcraft. She was locked in a cell and never seen again. Her story became the first whisper of the asylum's dark past. By the turn of the century, the asylum had become a place of horror. Patients were beaten, neglected, and sometimes disappeared. The town turned a blind eye, believing the suffering was a price worth paying. When the last patient left in 1932, the asylum stood empty. The town had moved on, but the echoes of its past remained, waiting for the next souls to wander too close. The first night, the temperature dropped. The air grew thick, and the walls seemed to hold their breath, as if waiting for something to wake. I heard it, a faint whisper, not from the wind, but from the walls themselves. It was soft, like a child's voice calling my name. I found a journal left behind, its pages brittle and stained. The last entry was dated the night before the patients disappeared. The writing was frantic. Entries about voices in the walls, doors opening on their own, and a child's laughter that never faded. I tried to ignore it, but the feeling that something was watching me grew stronger. I could feel it in the silence, in the stillness of the place. The night the lights went out, the silence was different. It wasn't the kind of silence you could ignore. It was the kind that pressed against your ears, demanding to be heard. A nurse, her face pale and drawn, stood at the end of the hall, clutching a medical chart. Her eyes were fixed on the door, which stood slightly ajar, as if it had been pushed open by an unseen force. When the lights returned, she was gone. The door was closed, and the hallway was empty. Only the medical chart remained, crumpled on the floor, as if she had been torn from the world without a sound. The last thing she ever said, whispered into the still air, was a plea. A sound that was never heard, but felt in the bones of those who came after, searching for answers in the dark. I spoke to a woman named Clara, who said she saw a woman in a white dress standing at the entrance, whispering to herself as if she were waiting for someone who would never come. She claimed the woman never moved, just stood there, her arms outstretched as if holding onto the walls of the place that had once held her. Another man told me he heard a child's laughter coming from the basement, but when he went to investigate, there was no one there, only the echo of his own footsteps. He said the laughter stopped the moment he turned his head, and the silence that followed was louder than any noise. There are no ghosts, but there are echoes of those who once lived here, trapped between the walls and the memories they left behind. Some say the asylum is not abandoned. It is waiting. We entered the building with flashlights in hand, the silence pressing in like a weight we couldn't escape. The air felt thick, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The floorboards creaked beneath our feet, each step echoing like a warning. It was as if the structure was alive, watching, waiting for us to make the wrong move. In the basement, we found a room sealed with rusted chains. The door had been forced open, yet the lock remained intact, as though something had tried to hold it in place. Inside, the walls were lined with old patient records, yellowed and brittle. Names were scrawled in shaky handwriting, some of them repeated, as if they had been written over and over in despair. One entry stood out: Patient 17, no response to stimuli. Last seen in the East Wing. No further records. The words felt like a whisper from the past, calling us to look deeper. As we left, the wind howled through the broken windows, carrying with it a sound that was not of the world we knew. A voice, faint and distant, calling our names. There is one thing no one has ever been able to explain. It's not the screams, not the blood, not the missing bodies. It's the silence between them. Every time someone ventures inside, they hear the screams. But there's always a moment, just a split second, where the sound vanishes. And then it comes back, louder, like it's waiting for something. I've asked everyone who's been there. The police, the researchers, the exorcists. No one can say what happens during that silence. No one can describe it. It's like the place is holding its breath. The silence isn't just an absence of sound. It's something else. Something that waits. And when it finally breaks, it doesn't break with a scream. It breaks with a whisper. And then nothing. Some say the walls of this place still remember the screams that once echoed through them. The sounds of suffering are said to linger, trapped between these crumbling stones, never allowed to fade. Neighbors claim that on certain nights, the wind howls like a mourning wail, carrying voices that no one can quite place, neither familiar nor entirely foreign. Some believe the building itself is a prison for the souls of those who died here, a place where the living are warned not to tread, lest they be claimed by the silence. There are those who claim to have heard whispers in the night, voices pleading for release, a chorus of the lost, trapped in the echoes of a place that was never meant to hold them. Even now, decades later, the stories live on. Not as tales of horror, but as warnings that some places are never truly abandoned, and some memories are never truly forgot. The last patient to leave the asylum was never seen again. No body was ever found. No records were ever filed. Just silence and the weight of a secret that refused to die. Years later, the building was sold, and its history was buried with the rest of the town's forgotten tragedies. But the echoes of its past refused to fade, lingering like a ghost in the architecture itself. No one has dared to return since the last patient vanished. But the building still stands, as though it's waiting for something, or someone, to come back and finish what was started. The mystery remains unsolved, and with it, the pain of those who were lost. The asylum is more than a building, it's a tomb, a prison, and a whisper in the dark that never lets go. And so, it waits. For the next curious soul, the next brave soul, the next one who thinks they can uncover the truth. But the truth, like the past, may never be found. The silence here is not empty. It is full of the weight of those who once lived and now linger. Their voices are not heard, but they are felt. We walk through their echoes, but never truly see them. They are here, in the spaces between breaths, in the stillness of the night. This place is not cursed. It is remembered. And memory, once given, can never be taken back. We leave with more than we came with. A quiet, a shadow, a whisper that lingers in the mind long after we're gone. The stories don't end here. They wait, they watch, they remember. The sea remembers. It clings to the bones of the past, whispering in salt and sorrow. The waters of the Bay of Gibraltar hold a name that has faded into the tide, but never the memory. In the early 19th century, the SS Valentia sailed with pride, a grand vessel of British iron and ambition. But ambition can be a cruel master, and the sea is never kind to those who forget their place. The storm came without warning. The waves rose like mountains, and the ship was swallowed whole. Of the 300 aboard, only 2 survived. The rest were lost to the depths, their bodies never recovered, their names never spoken. The Valentia story is not told in books or maps. It lingers in the hush of the waves, in the eyes of those who still dream of the sea. Its ghosts are not buried, but drowned. The sea remembers. It remembers the Valentia, and it will never forget those who were lost to its depths. In 1922, the SS Valentia was built with a promise of safety, a promise that would soon be drowned in the depths of the Atlantic. It was a British ship, owned by the British India Steam Navigation Company, carrying passengers and cargo to India, a route well-worn but not without peril. Among the passengers were British colonists, Indian immigrants, and a crew of men who had little reason to believe they would not be the ones to meet the sea. The ship was no stranger to the Atlantic, but the storm that would come would be unlike any it had faced before. The captain, a man of experience, made his orders, but the storm would not be so easily tamed, and the sea would claim more than it had ever bargained for. This was the beginning of a tragedy that would leave a mark on history, a mark carved in the silence of the deep. The first sign came when the radio crackled with static, and the captain's voice cut through the noise. Too calm, too late. The water was rising faster than the charts had predicted, and the ship's bow was dipping lower. as if it were being pulled under by something unseen. The air grew heavy, and the smell of salt and metal became overwhelming, as if the sea itself was breathing its last breath. Then came the sound, low, groaning, like the ship was crying out, and the first of the lifeboats began to tilt in the rising tide. The captain called for the distress signal, but the radio was silent, as if the world had decided to forget them, to let them sink into the abyss. The night the Valentia vanished, the sea grew still, as if holding its breath. No wind, no waves, just silence, and the sound of a ship disappearing into the dark. The crew, unaware of the approaching storm, gathered below deck, unaware that their fate had already been sealed by the ocean's cruel hand. The storm came without warning, a wall of water crashing over the deck, swallowing everything in its path. The Valentia was gone, and so were the lives that had been aboard. In the days that followed, bodies were found adrift, some barely clinging to the wreckage, others never found at all. The ocean had claimed them, and the world had forgotten. The Valentia was more than a ship. It was a home, a life, a future. And now it was only a ghost, remembered only in the silence of the waves. One survivor, a fisherman named Elias Rourke, described the sea as if it had swallowed the sky. He said the water turned black, and the waves came like a beast with teeth. He spoke of bodies floating like stones, their faces frozen in silent screams. Some were tangled in the wreckage, others just vanished into the dark, as if the sea had never known them. Another witness, a young woman named Clara, said she saw a child's hand grasping at the air, reaching toward the shore. She ran to help, but the tide had already taken it. She said the child's eyes were open, wide with terror, and the sea pulled it under like a shadow in the dark. She never saw the face, only the hand, reaching for something that was never there. In the days that followed, the survivors spoke of voices in the water, whispering names they could not understand. Some claimed they heard their own voices, calling them back to the sea. They said the sea did not forget, and that the drowned would not rest. That the Valentia had not just vanished, it had been devoured, and the ghost still swam beneath the waves. The investigation began in silence, with investigators combing through the wreckage like ghosts themselves, searching for answers in the ruins of a ship that had long since vanished. They found things that should not have been there. Letters written in a language no one recognized, and symbols etched into the wood as though the ship had been cursed before it ever set sail. The deeper they searched, the more the truth began to unravel. The Valentia had not just sunk, it had been abandoned mid-voyage. Its crew vanished without a trace. The official report claimed a storm had taken the ship. But the evidence told a different story, one of fear, of something unseen, of a ship that had been lured into the depths by a force beyond human understanding. And in the silence of the deep, the ship still waits, its ghost still bound to the sea, its story still unspoken, its truth still hidden beneath the waves. There is one detail, buried in the archives, that has never been explained. The Valentia's final log entry mentions a strange, sudden shift in the tide. The crew was told the storm had passed, yet the ship was still caught in an unnatural current. No one knew where it was going or why. No records show the ship was ever in that area. No distress calls were ever received. Just a single, unexplained entry in a log that should have ended with the ship's last breath. And now, as we search for answers, we are left with only that one line, a ghost in the tide, and the silence of the deep. In the quiet fishing villages along the coast, some say the Valentia's ghosts still drift in the tide, silent and sorrowful, waiting for the sea to claim them again. Some believe the ship's name echoes in the wind, a warning to those who dare to sail where the past still holds its breath. There are those who claim to hear the sound of a ship in distress, even in the calmest night, a mournful wail that fades into the waves. In the old sailors' tales, they say the Valentia never truly sank, but lingers as a warning, a place where the sea remembers its dead. The stories don't end with the ship. They end with the sea and those who still listen, hoping to hear the echo of something lost beneath the waves. And so, the Valentia lives not in the water, but in the silence, in the stories, in the hearts of those who dare to remember. Even now, decades later, no one knows exactly where the Valentia sank. The sea has claimed its secrets, and the truth has been swallowed by the depths. The coordinates are uncertain, the wreckage unlocated. Some say it lies in the shadow of the Azores. Others claim it rests in the cold embrace of the Labrador Current. Families still wait for answers, for closure, for a final resting place. The sea has taken their loved ones, but it has not taken their longing. The ocean is a silent witness, a keeper of the unspoken. It remembers, but it does not tell. It holds the ghosts, but never the truth. And so, the Valentia drifts on, a name whispered in the wind, a memory lost to the deep, a story without an end. The ocean remembers the names we forgot. It holds them in its cold, silent depths, where the light never reaches and the time never ends. Each wave that crashes against the shore carries the weight of a story left untold, a voice lost to the abyss, and a sorrow that never fades. We speak of ghosts, but the sea does not forget. It does not forgive. It only waits, patient and endless, for the next silence to fall. When the lights go out and the winds die down, the sea whispers its stories. But we must not listen too closely. Some truths are better left beneath the waves. The Valentia is gone, but its silence lingers. And in that silence, the drowned ghosts still wait for us to remember. The Priory of Sion, once a sanctuary of wisdom and secrecy, now lies in ruins, its stones whispering tales of betrayal and loss. Its grand halls, once filled with the scent of ancient books and the murmur of scholars, now echo with the silence of abandonment. The air is thick with the weight of history, a history that has turned from promise to tragedy with each passing year. This place, once a beacon of truth, now stands as a monument to the fragile nature of knowledge and the cost of its pursuit. The Priory of Sion is no longer a place of learning, but a tomb of secrets, waiting to be unearthed by those who dare to listen. It began in the shadows of the 13th century, when a knight named Robert de Sion, disillusioned with the church, sought refuge in the desolate hills of France. His name was etched into the stones of a crumbling chapel, a silent testament to a forgotten cause. Together with a few like-minded men, he founded the Priory of Sion, a brotherhood sworn to protect sacred knowledge and preserve the truth of the world's ancient past. Their mission was to resist the tide of ignorance and corruption. The priory became a sanctuary for scholars, mystics, and visionaries who believed that the world was built on secrets older than time itself. They guarded scrolls, relics, and oral traditions that no empire could claim. Yet even in the safety of their cloistered existence, the weight of the world pressed upon them. They were watched, questioned, and ultimately betrayed by those who saw their mission as a threat to the established order. The seeds of their downfall were sown in the silence of their faith and the weight of their secrets. The Priory of Sion was not a place of power, but of truth, and truth, in the wrong hands, can be the most dangerous of weapons. The first signs were subtle, almost imperceptible, a silence where there should have been voices. A hollow echo in the halls of the priory where once laughter had been heard. The members began to vanish without a word. Their absence felt more than just a loss. It was an unraveling of the very fabric of our existence. The archives, once filled with the weight of history, began to crumble. Pages fell from their bindings, and the ink bled like blood from the hands of those who had written them. The rituals, once sacred and binding, became mere shadows of their former selves. The fire that had once burned in the hearth now flickered weakly, like a dying ember. We stood at the edge of a chasm, the priory no longer a sanctuary but a prison of memory, and we could not find the door to escape. It was the night the silence broke. A child vanished without a sound, and the priory was left with only echoes and questions. The search began in the dead of night, torches flickering as monks and villagers scoured the forest, calling out names that would never return. No body was ever found, only a trail of footprints leading into the mist and a single, unmarked grave where the earth had not been disturbed. The priory's silence was shattered, but the truth remained buried, like the child who had never been spoken of again. In the end, the priory moved on, but the memory of that night lingered like a shadow, never leaving the hearts of those who had searched. And so, the hollowing began, not with a scream, but with a silence that would never be filled. I remember the silence that followed the last prayer. The air was thick, like the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths pressing down on the stone walls. The monks were gone, but their voices lingered in the echoes. The scent of incense, now stale, clung to the air like a ghost refusing to leave. One monk, old and trembling, whispered to me before he left, He said the silence was not empty, it was full of what had been lost. He never explained what had been taken, only that the priory was no longer a place of prayer, but a tomb for something sacred. We tried to preserve what we could, but even the books, the records, the very memory of our order were not enough to keep the silence from swallowing us whole. Now I walk these halls alone. The silence is louder than any sound. And I know, with a terrible certainty, that the priory is no longer a house of God, it is a grave. The investigation began with a quiet resolve, but soon the walls of the priory seemed to close in. Documents whispered of secrets buried beneath the stone, and the air grew heavy with the weight of what had been hidden for decades. Among the records, we found names that should not have existed, and dates that did not match the history the priory had long upheld. The past had been rewritten, and the present was built on a foundation of lies. We uncovered evidence of rituals performed in secret, of oaths sworn to powers that no longer exist. The priory had not been protecting knowledge, it had been guarding a curse, passed down through generations. The deeper we dug, the more we realized that the priory had not been a sanctuary. It had been a prison, its walls built to contain something far greater than the sins of its founders. And in the silence between the stone, we heard the echoes of voices long silenced, pleading for release from a past they could never undo. The priory had been hollow for a long time. Its heart had been removed long before we arrived. There is one detail that has never been explained. A single line in a single document, buried beneath layers of silence and secrecy. It was a name that should have been enough to unravel everything. But no one has ever spoken it aloud, no one has ever written it again. We have all seen the evidence. The maps, the archives, the testimonies. But this name, this one word, remains a void in the middle of a story that should have been complete. It is as if the name was never meant to be known. As if the act of naming it would unravel something that was never meant to be uncovered. And so we are left with a question that no one dares ask. A name that has no meaning, a silence that has no answer. The last truth, erased before it could be told. The hollowing of the priory is not just of stone or memory. It is of truth itself. A truth that was silenced before it could be spoken. In the quiet villages near the priory, old men still speak of the ghost of a monk who walks the stone paths at dusk, his robe trailing behind like a shadow of the past. They say he carries the weight of the lost secrets, and that if you listen closely, you can hear the echoes of prayers that no longer rise from the stone walls. Some claim the priory is cursed, and that the silence now is not the absence of sound, but the sound of something being buried, and not by the hands of men. Local children are warned not to wander near the ruins at night, for the stones are said to remember, and the wind carries the whispers of what was taken. Even now, in the hush of the morning, the stones seem to hold their breath, waiting for the day when the truth will finally be spoken, and the silence will break. The legends live on, not because they are true, but because they are the only thing left to remember, a whisper in the wind, a ghost in the stone. The final documents remain sealed, their contents a whisper in the void. No one has ever dared to open them, not even those who sought the truth. The names of those who vanished are not written in stone, but in silence. Their fate is buried beneath layers of deception and time. The priory's legacy is not one of triumph, but of unanswered questions. What was lost and what was never found? Even now, the wind seems to carry the echoes of their voices. A reminder that some secrets are never meant to be unearthed. We can only look upon the silence and wonder. The truth is gone, but the memory lingers like a shadow in the dark. And so, the Priory of Sion fades into legend, its mystery forever unresolved, its truth forever out of reach. The silence that follows is not empty, but filled with the weight of what was lost. A house built on lies, now standing as a monument to the dream that never took root. In the quiet, we hear the echoes of those who believed and the sorrow of those who were betrayed. Their names are no longer spoken, but their absence lingers. The Priory was more than a place. It was a promise, and promises, when broken, leave scars that time cannot heal. We speak of truth, but sometimes the truth is a wound, and the wound is what remains when the illusion is gone. And so, we leave this tale not as a warning, but as a memory, one that will not fade, but wait in silence for the next story. The wind howls across the frozen tundra, a sound that has echoed for over a century. It carries the weight of loss, the whispers of the past that refuse to be silenced. Here, in this desolate expanse, the silence is broken only by the wind. It's a place where time stands still, and the memory of those who vanished lingers in the air. This is where the Franklin expedition came to an end. A place where men who once lived now lie buried beneath the snow, their stories frozen in time, waiting to be told. The Arctic does not forget. It holds its secrets close, and the wind carries them far. This place is not just a map of ice and snow, it is a tomb of memory. In 1845, the Royal Navy launched the Franklin expedition, a bold attempt to chart the last unknown stretch of the Arctic. It was an era of imperial ambition and scientific curiosity, but it would soon become a tale of human folly and nature's indifference. Commanded by Sir John Franklin, a seasoned Arctic explorer, the mission was to find the elusive Northwest Passage. Franklin was respected, but his decision to take 2 ships and a large crew was both ambitious and risky. They departed from Greenhithe, England, with high hopes and heavy supplies. The expedition was meant to be a triumph of science and exploration, but they were unaware of the horrors that awaited them in the frozen north. The journey began with promise, but as they ventured further north, the ice grew denser, and the weather turned more severe. The men, though well-equipped, were unprepared for the true magnitude of the Arctic's unforgiving nature. What started as an expedition of discovery would soon become a journey into the unknown, where the elements would test not only their endurance, but the very limits of human survival. The first signs that something was terribly wrong came in the form of silence. The usual hum of the camp was missing, replaced by an eerie stillness that clung to the air like a shroud. Then came the absence of the men. Their belongings were left behind, scattered and untouched, as if they had vanished in an instant, leaving only their shadows in the snow. Letters and journals were found, scattered like pieces of a broken heart, their words frozen in time, speaking of a journey that had turned into a nightmare. Even the dogs, once loyal and barking at the dawn, were gone, their bones buried beneath the snow, silent witnesses to a tragedy that had unfolded in the dark. The first signs of something terribly wrong were not warnings, but echoes of a fate that had already been sealed, lingering in the silence and the cold. They vanished in the end, not by choice, but by the cruel hand of the ice. One by one, the men were swallowed by the Arctic's silent hunger, their bodies never found, their names lost to time. The last known sighting was of a single tent, abandoned, its fabric frozen in place, as if time itself had paused to remember them. The ice, indifferent and unyielding, claimed them all. No struggle, no cry, just the slow, quiet surrender of the human spirit to the wild. They were not lost to the world, but lost to themselves, their bodies never found, their fate a mystery that haunts the Arctic still. In the winter of 1848, a man named John Franklin, in his final letter, wrote of a perfectly calm and clear sky and the promise of a mild spring ahead. But the words were only echoes of a fate already sealed. Survivors who made it back told of a frozen wasteland, of men lost to the ice, and of the silence that followed. Some spoke of ghosts, of Franklin himself, wandering the snow, never to return. Others claimed they heard voices in the night, of men who had died, calling for help. Some said they saw their own reflections in frozen water, only to find that no one was there to save them. The final accounts, though fragmented and inconsistent, all share the same truth. The men did not die of cold or hunger, but of something far more insidious, an unraveling of the mind and the loss of the soul. The voices of those who lived, the echoes of those who perished, speak of a tragedy that lingers in the wind, in the silence of the ice, and in the hearts of those who remember. The search for the Franklin ships led to discoveries that defied reason. Bones, tools, and artifacts lay scattered across the ice, as if the men had been caught in the throes of a final, desperate struggle. Among the wreckage, they found the remnants of a final meal, meat, biscuits, and a half-eaten flask. It was as if the men had stopped to share one last, silent moment before the cold claimed them. In one tent, they found a man's body, still in his clothes, his face frozen in a look of quiet resignation. The tent was half buried in snow, as though he had never left. The most haunting find was a journal, half burned, its pages smudged with snow and time. The last entry spoke of hope, of a chance to reach land, and then silence. The evidence suggested something worse than mere hardship. The men had not simply perished by cold or hunger, they had been driven to the edge of madness, and then to their end. There is one question that lingers, unanswered. What did they see in the final days? What made them stop, not with a cry, but with silence? We have maps, we have bones, we have stories. But not of that last look, that final moment before the world swallowed them whole. It is the last image we have of them. Not of death, but of a moment frozen in time, a question left in the cold, unanswered. And so they vanished, not with a scream, not with a cry, but with silence. A silence that has never been explained. In the quiet corners of the Arctic, local legends persist, stories passed down like echoes of a forgotten tragedy, each one a whisper of what might have happened. Some say the men were devoured by the ice itself, others that they were betrayed by the land, or that they were cursed by the spirits of the frozen north. These stories are not just tales of the past. They are the lingering pain of a people who lost something sacred and who still feel its absence in the silence of the tundra. Even today, the wind carries the name of Franklin, and in the stillness of the ice, the echo of a lost expedition lingers, waiting to be heard. Even now, decades later, the mystery of Franklin's fate refuses to be solved. The last journal entries remain unexplained, their final words echoing through time like a ghostly whisper. The frozen graves of the men who perished remain undisturbed, their bodies locked in the ice, a silent testament to the cruel indifference of the Arctic. Every new discovery brings us closer, but also deeper into the abyss of uncertainty. The Arctic is a graveyard of secrets, and we are still trying to listen. The Franklin expedition is not just a story of loss. It is a reminder of how fragile human ambition is in the face of nature's relentless power. And so, the mystery lingers, waiting for the next generation to uncover its truth, before time and the ice erase it forever. Even in the silence, the wind carries echoes of their last words, lost to the vast, frozen dark. Their names are buried beneath snow, their stories locked in time, waiting for someone to listen. Their final moments are not in the record, but in the silence that follows. In the end, they were not lost to the ice, they were lost to the world. And so, we walk on, carrying their silence with us, like a ghost in the wind. It was a quiet, ordinary street in North London, where the air felt heavy with the weight of time. The house stood alone, a relic of the past, its windows dark and its walls whispering secrets that no one dared to speak aloud. The house had been lived in for decades, passed from one family to another, each leaving behind their own ghosts. It was said to be haunted, not by a spirit of vengeance, but by something far more tragic. The most recent occupant, the Hodgson family, were just trying to make a home. They had no idea that the house would become the center of one of the most infamous paranormal cases in history. It was a place that seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something to happen. Something that would change the lives of those who lived there forever. The story began in the autumn of 1977, in a quiet London suburb, where the air grew heavy with the weight of secrets and the hum of unseen forces. The family, the Parsons, moved in with their young son, James, and soon found themselves caught in a storm of unexplained sounds, shadows, and a cold that defied reason. The mother, Patricia, became the voice of fear, her concern deepening as the phenomena grew more violent, more personal, and more terrifying. And then there was the boy, James, whose innocence was shattered by the nightmarish reality that unfolded around him. A reality that would haunt him for years to come. Together, they were drawn into a mystery that would become one of the most infamous cases in the history of the paranormal. A story of fear, loss, and the echoes that never fade. The first signs were subtle, almost imperceptible. A flicker in the corner of the eye, a shadow that didn't belong. The air grew heavy, as if something unseen had taken up residence in the room. Then came the sounds, soft, rhythmic, like a heartbeat in the walls. A low hum that seemed to rise from the floorboards, pulsing with a presence that defied explanation. The cold came next, not just a draft, but a chill that seeped into the bones, lingering even after the door was closed. It was as if the room had turned against them, refusing to let them go. And then the voices, whispers that slithered through the walls, not from the living, but from something that had no name. A language that was never spoken, yet understood all too well. The family tried to ignore it, to dismiss it as a trick of the mind, but the signs were too real, too persistent. Something had taken root in their home, and it was not going to let them leave. One evening, the house fell silent, and the air grew thick with an unnatural stillness. The children had gone to bed, and the parents sat in the living room, unaware of the horror that was about to unfold. A sound, soft, almost imperceptible, echoed through the hallway. It was not the wind, nor the creak of an old house. It was something else entirely, something that should not exist in this world. The children were gone. No signs of struggle, no clues, just an eerie silence and the overwhelming sense that something had taken them, something that defied reason and logic. The family was left in darkness, not just of light, but of understanding. They had lost more than their children. They had lost a piece of their reality, and with it, their sense of safety. The Enfield poltergeist had claimed its first victims, and the world would never be the same again. The echoes of that night would follow them for the rest of their lives. I remember the cold seeping through the floorboards, like the house itself was mourning. The sound of the chair scraping across the linoleum was louder than the silence around it. The door to the bedroom swung open on its own, and for a moment, I thought I saw a figure in the corner of the room, but it vanished before I could blink. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on my chest, and I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. When the lights came back on, everything was still, but I knew something had changed. The house had become a tomb, and we were all comment this emoji if you made it to the end.